Hi, guys. Are you ready for chapter 16? All right, before I begin, just a reminder I'm reading The Seer of Shadows by Avi, and I want to thank Scholastic and Avi for allowing me to read this book and record the videotaping and share it with you guys. All right, you ready? Chapter 16. The next day, at the appointment time, Mr. Middleditch went to Mrs. Von Mock's home. I went with him. I'm not exactly sure why he wanted me. I suspect it was vanity. I suspect Mr. Middleditch wished me at his side to observe the swindle take effect. How like the man to want my admiration. I was more than willing to go, wishing to see how the woman would react. I also wanted to speak to Peg so as to learn more about what she'd said regarding Eleonora. Were Peg's statements, other than there being no pictures of Eleanor in the house, true? In all of this, I was hoping to make some sense of that amazing fourth picture. The point being, I was now convinced something very odd was going on in the Von Mocht household, and, let me confess it, I really wished to know what it was. We arrived at the house with Mr. Middleditch carrying his books in a we arrived at the house with Mr. Middleditch carrying his photos in a black portfolio tied neatly with a red ribbon. He pulled the bell. Peg opened the door. She did her little curtsy, saying, "Madame is expecting you." But unlike her previous visit, when Peg only glanced at Mr. Middleditch, this time she looked directly at me. Her glance unnerved me. It seemed to proclaim that she and I shared something, some knowledge private just to us. Yet, what that understanding was remained a mystery to me. Peg led us into the front parlor, where Mrs. Von Mocht was waiting. I followed a few steps behind Mr. Middleditch. Peg remained in the room, taking a place in a corner out of sight. It was quite warm. Mrs. Von Mocht was dressed in a gown a little more glamorous than she had worn previously. Her face was not nearly so pale either, less powder, perhaps, displaying healthy pink cheeks, whereas the scent of perfume was a little stronger. The mourning armband was gone. Upon her lap lay embroidery work, but I noticed that while she held the needle in hand, as if caught in the middle of work, the needle had no thread. Her husband was not present, for which I, for one, was grateful. There was too much anger in the man. As we came forward, I glanced to Mrs. Von Mock's left at the table where the vase with dried flowers and the candlestick remained. There, among these things, I saw a face. Eleanor Von Mock's face. Shocked is barely the word for what I experienced. Such was my great fright that I will swear my heart momentarily stopped beating. In that space of time, I could neither breathe nor swallow. The hair at the back of my neck prickled, not willing to believe what I was seeing. I closed my eyes, but could not resist looking again. The face was gone. Struggling to control my emotions and my trembling body, my first thought was that my eyes had simply deceived me. I turned toward Mrs. Von Mocht. Nothing in her demeanor suggested she had seen anything. I looked to Mr. Middleditch. No reaction there either. I glanced at Peg. The same. I told myself that my mind was merely playing tricks and quickly found a rational answer. Over the past few days, I had been continually seeing the ghostly image of Eleonora that Mr. Middleditch had concocted in that very same spot. What I was seeing, I told myself, was simply what was on my mind, not something actually there. These thoughts took only seconds. In fact, it takes longer to describe the ghastly moment than to live it. In any case, I was brought back to my senses now sparked as I lit fuse. My hearing Mr. Middleditch say, "Mrs. Von Mocht, how do you do?" He made his little bow. "Very well, Mr. Middleditch," she returned in a perfectly civil tone while holding out her delicate white hand for him to touch. "I hope I find you well?" "Ah, very well, madame, thank you." After briefly holding the woman's fingertips, he straightened. "Madame, I think you will be very pleased with the results of your photo session." I could almost see his bulldog's tail wag. "I expect to be." The thought struck me, considering her unthreaded needle and his posturing, that they were both playing games, though neither knew that about the other. But while I knew his game very well, What I wondered was hers. May I rest the portfolio there? Mr. Middleditch said, indicating the sofa. Please do. A true showman, Mr. Middleditch made a little bow, and then with an elaborate movement, just slow enough to create anticipation, he set the portfolio on the couch. With unnecessary fuss, he untied the ribbons, spread the portfolio leaves, picked up the single photograph he'd brought, and with the greatest delicacy carried it across the room. Another little bow. Then, holding the image with two hands, he offered the picture to the woman. Moreover, he deliberately presented the image blank side up so she would have to turn it over and take it in whole. Mr. P.T. Barnum, the circus man, had nothing on Mr. Middleditch. Mrs. von Mock took the picture, turned the photo over, and, with her head tilted slightly forward, gazed upon the image that Mr. Middleditch had created. The room grew very still. That was the end of chapter 16, my friends. You will get chapter 17 next Monday. So you're going to have to wait Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I will give you chapter 17. All right. Once you have watched this, then you'll need to answer the question that is included with the video. Talk to you soon. Bye.